"Disabled people don't belong here." The words didn't just land. They cut through the air like something sharp enough to leave a mark you can't see, but never forget. For a second, everything around me felt unreal. Like the world had paused just to make sure I heard it clearly. I remember looking down at my daughter, the way her fingers tightened around mine. Confused, searching my face for answers I didn't have. Who says something like that? And more importantly, who believes it enough to act on it? I wish I could tell you that was the worst part, that it ended with words. But it didn't. What happened next turned a quiet neighborhood into something unrecognizable, and I didn't know it then. Standing there frozen, but that moment was the beginning of everything falling apart. It's just been my daughter and me for a long time now. Life didn't ask if I was ready to raise her alone. It simply decided for me the day her mother didn't come home. One moment, we were a family of 3, laughing over something small and forgettable, and the next, everything became quiet in a way that never really goes away. She was so young when it happened. Too young to understand loss, but old enough to feel it settle deep inside her. I remember the way she used to reach for her mom without thinking, like muscle memory refusing to accept reality. Over time, we became everything to each other. Mornings were slower, evenings a little heavier, but we learned how to fill the silence together. After the accident that changed her body, our world shifted again. Simple things became challenges, and ordinary days required more strength than anyone should have to give. But she never stopped trying. She would smile through the pain, joke about getting stronger, as if bravery were something she could choose every morning. And maybe it was. I held on to that. I held on to her, because no matter how hard things got, I kept believing we were moving toward something better, something kinder, a place where she could just exist without being seen as something broken. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind you don't think twice about while you're living it. We were crossing the street, her hand in mine, talking about something small, something that doesn't matter anymore. I remember the sound first, not the impact, tires screaming, a horn that came too late, and then everything collapsed into chaos. The world didn't slow down like people say it does. It shattered all at once. 1 second she was beside me, and the next she was on the ground, too still, too quiet. The hospital lights were harsh, unforgiving, exposing every fear I tried to hide. Doctors moved quickly, voices low but urgent, words like spinal damage and uncertain recovery echoing in ways I couldn't process. I sat there useless, watching machines breathe and beep while my daughter fought through something no child should ever face. When she finally opened her eyes, she didn't cry. She just looked at me, searching for reassurance as if I could somehow make it all make sense. The days that followed blurred together into corridors, therapy rooms, and quiet moments filled with unspoken questions. Crutches replaced her steps, and every movement carried a weight it never had before. Still, she smiled, small but real, as if she was determined to meet this new life without fear, even when I couldn't. When we moved into the neighborhood, it felt like stepping into a version of life we had been hoping for but never quite reached. The streets were clean, the houses carefully kept, and people smiled in a way that made you believe things might finally settle. Neighbors came by with small gestures of kindness, warm meals, quiet words, gentle encouragement that didn't feel forced. They spoke to my daughter with patience, cheering her on for every small step she managed, as if they understood how much those moments meant. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to relief. Like maybe we had found a place where she could heal without being watched or judged. But even in those early days, there was something I couldn't quite name. A pause that lingered too long in certain conversations. A look that didn't fully match the smile it came with. And then there was the one neighbor who never showed up, never introduced herself, yet somehow always seemed aware of us. I didn't know her name then, only the feeling that followed whenever I noticed her watching from a distance. It wasn't obvious enough to confront, just enough to unsettle, like a quiet warning I chose to ignore. The first letter arrived quietly, slipped under the door like it didn't want to be noticed. It was formal, almost polite, but the words inside carried something colder. It spoke about maintaining standards, preserving the neighborhood's image, subtle phrases that didn't name us directly but felt aimed with precision. I read it twice, then folded it away, convincing myself it was nothing more than overreach. Something that would fade if I didn't give it attention. But it didn't fade. More letters followed, each one a little less careful than the last. Complaints about safety concerns, mentions of property value, and suggestions that certain adjustments should be made. They never said her name, never openly acknowledged my daughter, yet everything pointed back to her existence like it was a problem to be solved. I started noticing other things too. Measurements taken without explanation, conversations that stopped when I approached, and smiles that felt rehearsed. Karen finally revealed herself not through an introduction, but through control. Her presence lingered in every notice, every complaint, every silent judgment that spread through the community. I told myself it wasn't personal, that I was reading too much into it, but my daughter noticed the shift before I did. She asked quieter questions, stayed closer to me, her confidence shrinking in ways that broke something inside me. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. I should have acted sooner, before silence became permission. It happened in the open, not hidden behind letters or polite wording, but out in the street where everyone could see. We were walking slowly, my daughter focused on each careful step, when Karen stepped directly into our path. Her smile was there, but it didn't belong to anything kind. She spoke loudly, deliberately, making sure every nearby window and passing neighbor could hear. She talked about rules, about standards, about how some people simply didn't fit into a place like this. Then she said it clearly, without hesitation, that we didn't belong here. The silence that followed felt heavier than her words. I could feel eyes on us, people watching but saying nothing, caught between discomfort and fear. My instinct was to react, to defend, to push back against the cruelty standing right in front of me, but my daughter's hand tightened around mine, and I forced myself to stay calm. Even as something inside me burned, Karen leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to feel personal, promising consequences if we didn't leave on our own. It wasn't just a warning. It felt like a decision she had already made, and as she walked away, the tension didn't leave with her. It stayed behind, thick and unresolved, like something worse was already on its way. It happened faster than my mind could process, like the world finally stopped pretending it was safe. My daughter was just a few steps ahead of me, carefully moving along the sidewalk, when Karen appeared again, this time without warning, without words. She blocked her path like she had every right to be there, like my daughter was the problem standing in her way. Before I could react, Karen reached out and grabbed the crutches. She yanked them away with a force that made my daughter stumble instantly, her balance gone in a second. I heard her gasp, that small broken sound that no parent ever forgets. She fell hard onto the ground, hands scraping against the pavement, pain written all over her face. And then it escalated. Karen didn't stop. She pulled her hair, forcing her head back as if she was trying to erase her presence entirely. My daughter cried out, calling for me, her voice shaking in a way that tore through everything inside me. I don't remember deciding to run. I just moved. One moment I was behind them, and the next I was there, seeing everything in a way that didn't feel real. Rage took over before thought could return. My voice broke as I shouted, stepping between them, the world narrowing down to one unbearable moment I could never undo. The sirens arrived like a breaking point, cutting through the chaos and forcing everything to freeze. Neighbors gathered at a distance, no longer silent, their voices overlapping in shock and disbelief. Within minutes, the situation stopped belonging to us alone and became something official, something recorded and undeniable. Officers separated everyone carefully, asking questions I could barely answer as my hands kept shaking. My daughter was taken aside first, wrapped in quiet attention, her injuries being checked while she tried to stay strong through tears. Then the evidence started to surface. A neighbor stepped forward with footage. Another mentioned what they had seen but were too afraid to say earlier. And then came the recording from Karen's own device, capturing everything without leaving room for interpretation. Her words, her actions, all exposed in a way no denial could survive. The confidence she once carried in this neighborhood began to collapse in real time. For the first time since this started, the balance shifted. It wasn't about fear anymore. It was about truth being seen clearly, finally standing where silence used to be. The courtroom felt colder than any of us expected, not because of the air, but because of what was finally being revealed. Karen sat there, no longer the voice that controlled the neighborhood, but someone stripped of certainty. The footage played without interruption, showing everything exactly as it happened, leaving no space for excuses or rewritten stories. Each second made it harder for her to maintain the image she once protected so carefully. When the verdict was delivered, there was no confusion left in the room. The consequences were final, documented, and unavoidable. Years of intimidation, control, and cruelty collapsed into a single moment of judgment that could not be reversed. Her reputation, once built on authority and fear, disappeared almost instantly, replaced by silence and accountability. But the most important shift wasn't in her. It was in us. My daughter sat beside me, still healing, still learning to trust the world again, but no longer carrying the same weight of fear. For the first time in a long time, I could feel something return that I thought we had lost completely: peace. Not perfect, not untouched, but real enough to begin again. After everything, life slowly began to settle into something gentler. My daughter grew stronger, not just in her steps, but in the way she smiled again without hesitation. The neighborhood didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt ordinary, in the best possible way. No tension behind fences, no silent judgment in passing eyes, just calm days that no longer carried fear. I often think about how quickly everything changed, how close we came to losing peace completely, and it makes me wonder how many stories like this go unheard. If this story made you feel something, tell me, what would you have done in that moment? And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life HOA drama stories.